The train whistle pierced the crisp morning air as Eleanor Dawson clutched her travel bag tightly against her chest. Through the dusty window, she watched the rugged landscape of Utah roll past, each mile bringing her closer to a future she could only imagine, a husband she had never met, a town she had never seen, and a life she desperately hoped would be better than the one she was leaving behind. It was May 1875, and at 22 years old, Eleanor had made the most daring decision of her life. Becoming a mail-order bride wasn't what she had dreamed of as a little girl, but after the fire that had claimed her family's home in Boston and left her permanently scarred, options had dwindled like autumn leaves. Next stop, Park City. The conductor called, making his way through the passenger car. Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. She adjusted her high-necked blouse and made sure the right side of her face was properly concealed by the carefully arranged fall of her auburn hair. The letter in her pocket crinkled as she shifted the formal acceptance from Mr. Gregory Montgomery, mine owner and prominent citizen of Park City, Utah. "Don't you worry none, miss," said the elderly woman seated across from her. "Mining towns need good women. You'll be treated like a queen." Eleanor forced a smile. "Thank you for your kindness," the woman leaned forward. "Though I must say Park City ain't for the faint of heart. Rough men, rough living, but the silvers made some men rich as Croesus." The train began to slow, wheels screeching against metal rails. Eleanor gathered her belongings, one trunk and two bags holding everything she owned in this world. As the platform came into view, she searched the waiting crowd for the man who matched the description in the letters. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a well-groomed mustache. She spotted him immediately, impossible to miss in his fine suit among the miners and laborers. Gregory Montgomery stood stiffly at the edge of the platform, his eyes scanning the disembarking passengers. Eleanor took a deep breath, straightened her back, and stepped off the train. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, approaching with what she hoped was a pleasant smile. "I'm Eleanor Dawson." His eyes widened slightly as they locked onto her face, or rather, the portion she couldn't hide with her hair. The scars that pulled at her right cheek twisted the corner of her eye and disappeared beneath her collar. His expression changed so quickly she might have missed it if she hadn't spent years watching for that exact reaction. Surprise, followed by poorly disguised revulsion. "Miss Dawson." His voice was cool and formal. "Welcome to Park City." Eleanor's stomach twisted. There was no warmth in his eyes, no hint of the charming correspondence that had given her hope. Instead, he looked as though he'd found something distasteful in his tea. "I trust your journey was satisfactory?" he asked, not offering to take her bags. "Yes, thank you," Eleanor replied, struggling to maintain her composure. They walked in uncomfortable silence to his waiting carriage. The driver loaded her trunk while Montgomery kept a careful distance. Once seated inside, he cleared his throat. "I must say, Miss Dawson, your appearance was not what I expected." His fingers drummed against his knee. "Your letters did not mention any physical peculiarities." Eleanor's cheeks burned. "I apologize for the misunderstanding, Mr. Montgomery. I was not attempting deception." "Nevertheless," he continued, "my position in this community requires certain standards to be maintained. I'm afraid I cannot." He paused, seemingly searching for the right words. "I cannot proceed with our arrangement." The world seemed to shrink around her. "I see," she whispered, though she had feared this exact scenario since posting her first letter. "I am not without compassion," Montgomery said briskly. "I will arrange for 2 weeks' lodging at the boarding house and provide you with enough funds for a return ticket to Boston." Eleanor stared out the window at the bustling mining town. Wooden buildings lined the main street, with the imposing structures of mine operations visible on the hillsides beyond. Return to what? There was nothing left for her in Boston except painful memories and pitying glances. "That is generous of you, Mr. Montgomery," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I believe I will remain in Park City and seek employment." His eyebrows rose. "That would be most unwise. This is no place for an unattached woman of your circumstances." "Nevertheless," she echoed his earlier word, "I intend to stay." The carriage rolled to a stop outside a two-story building with Silver Queen boarding house painted above the door. Montgomery handed her down without touching her more than necessary. "As you wish," he said stiffly. "Mrs. Holloway runs a respectable establishment. I will speak to her about your situation." Before Eleanor could respond, a commotion erupted further down the street. A horse reared, nearly throwing its rider, while a wagon swerved to avoid collision. The horse bolted directly toward where Eleanor stood frozen on the boardwalk. "Watch out," someone shouted. Strong arms suddenly swept her aside as the panicked horse thundered past. Eleanor found herself pressed against a solid chest, the scent of leather and pine filling her senses. "You all right, madam?" The voice was deep and warm, rumbling from the chest she was clutching. Eleanor looked up into the most striking blue eyes she had ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face beneath a worn cowboy hat. Unlike Montgomery's carefully groomed appearance, this man had several days' growth of beard and trail dust on his clothes, but his eyes held genuine concern. "Yes, thank you," she managed, realizing she was still holding on to him and quickly stepping back. The cowboy straightened his hat and glanced toward Montgomery, who had prudently retreated to the boarding house doorway during the commotion. "That's Travis Irwin," Montgomery said dismissively. "One of the local ranchers." Travis Irwin tipped his hat to Eleanor. "Madam," he said, then his eyes lingered on her face, the whole of her face, without a hint of the repulsion she had come to expect. Instead, his expression held simple curiosity and something else she couldn't name. "I appreciate your assistance, Mr. Irwin," she said formally. He nodded. "Just doing what anyone would." His gaze shifted to Montgomery. "Gregory," he acknowledged with noticeably less warmth. "Irwin," Montgomery replied stiffly. "If you'll excuse us, I was just helping Miss Dawson get settled." Travis's gaze returned to Eleanor, new to Park City. "Yes, just arrived," she replied. "Welcome to our little slice of heaven and hell," he said with a grin that transformed his whole face. Depending on which side of town you're standing on, despite everything, Eleanor found herself smiling back. "I'll keep that in mind." Montgomery cleared his throat impatiently. "Miss Dawson?" "It was a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Irwin," Eleanor said. Travis touched the brim of his hat again. "Likewise, Miss Dawson." He turned to leave, but then paused. "There's a social at the church Saturday evening. Whole town turns out. Might be a good way to meet folks." Before she could respond, Montgomery was ushering her into the boarding house, his disapproval evident in every line of his body. But Eleanor found herself looking back over her shoulder at the retreating figure of Travis Irwin, who moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. Mrs. Holloway, the boarding house proprietor, was a plump woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Eleanor could see the moment those eyes registered her scars, but unlike most, Mrs. Holloway's expression didn't change. "So you'll be staying with us for a spell," she said after Montgomery made the arrangements and hastily departed. "Let's get you settled. Dinner's at 6 sharp." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and window overlooking the main street. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed after Mrs. Holloway left, finally allowing the tears she'd been holding back to fall. Not just for today's rejection, but for all the doors that had closed since the night of the fire 3 years ago, she hadn't always been marked this way. Once, she had been considered a beauty with prospects and suitors. The fire had changed everything, claiming her parents and younger brother, and leaving her with scars that made people avert their eyes. The inheritance had sustained her for a while, but eventually, the letters to potential husbands in the West had seemed her only hope for a future that included more than pity. Eleanor wiped her tears and moved to the window. Below, Park City continued its busy afternoon. Miners in dirty clothes, merchants, ladies with parasols, children playing, all going about their lives. And there, tying his horse outside the general store, was Travis Irwin. She watched as he greeted people passing by, his easy manner evident even from a distance. Several men stopped to speak with him, and he laughed at something one of them said. There was something compelling about him, a natural authority that had nothing to do with fine clothes or practiced manners. "Well, Eleanor," she whispered to herself. You've come too far to turn back now. The next morning, Eleanor presented herself at every business on the main street, inquiring about employment. Most proprietors were polite but firm in their rejections. By midday, her spirits were sinking. "Excuse me," she said, entering the town's newspaper office. "I'm inquiring about any available positions." The man behind the desk looked up, his spectacles slipping down his nose. "What sort of position would you be looking for, miss?" "I can read and write proficiently. I'm good with figures. I worked as a teacher's assistant in Boston." The editor, Harold Jenkins, according to the sign on his desk, studied her with undisguised curiosity. "Boston, eh? What brings you to our little boomtown?" Eleanor hesitated. "I was hoping for a fresh start." Jenkins nodded slowly. "Don't need an assistant right now, but Mrs. Patterson at the school might. They're always short-handed with all these minors' kids running wild." Hope flickered in Eleanor's chest. "Thank you, I'll speak with her immediately." As she turned to leave, Jenkins called after her. "Miss, word travels fast in a town this size. If you're the lady Montgomery was supposed to marry, well," he shrugged. "Some folks might be less than welcoming through no fault of your own. Montgomery has influence." Eleanor's shoulders stiffened. "Thank you for the warning, Mr. Jenkins." The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple clapboard building with a bell tower. Classes were in session, so Eleanor waited on a bench outside until the children burst through the doors for their midday break. Mrs. Patterson, a stern-looking woman in her 40s, listened to Eleanor's inquiry with pursed lips. "We do need assistance," she admitted reluctantly. "But the children can be reactionary to things they find unusual, and parents have opinions about who teaches their children." Eleanor understood the unspoken message. "I assure you, Mrs. Patterson, I am well qualified, and children are often more accepting than adults give them credit for." "Perhaps," Mrs. Patterson hesitated. "There is a position, but it's not teaching. We need someone to organize the school library and handle record keeping. Less interaction with the children and parents." It wasn't what she had hoped for, but it was something. "When may I start?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. The pay is $12 a month." It was barely enough to cover her room and board, but Eleanor knew she was in no position to negotiate. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. I'll be here." Walking back toward town, Eleanor became aware of whispers and stares following her. News of Montgomery's rejection had indeed traveled fast. She quickened her pace, keeping her head high despite the burning in her cheeks. "Miss Dawson," she turned to see Travis Irwin approaching on horseback. He dismounted in one fluid motion and fell into step beside her. "Mr. Irwin, heard you were looking for work," he said without preamble. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "News travels quickly here, small towns." He shrugged. "Found anything?" "Yes, actually, I'll be working at the school library." Travis frowned. "For Patterson, she's paying you a pittance, I'd wager." "It's employment," Eleanor said simply. They walked in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Look, my sister Emma runs the Silver Spur. It's my ranch about 5 miles outside town. She could use help with the books and correspondence. Pays $25 a month plus room and board." Eleanor stopped walking. "Why would you offer that to a complete stranger?" His blue eyes met hers directly. "Because Patterson will work you to the bone for next to nothing. Because Montgomery's a fool whose opinion sways too many in this town, and because Emmer really does need the help." "I don't need charity, Mr. Irwin. It's not charity if you're doing honest work for honest pay." He gestured around them. "And town might not be the easiest place for you right now. Too many wagging tongues." Eleanor considered his words. The offer was tempting better pay and escape from the whispers already following her. But there was also pride. She had come to build her own life, not to be rescued. "I appreciate your offer, but I've already accepted the position at the school." Travis studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. The offer stands if you change your mind." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded paper. "My ranch, case you ever need anything." Before she could respond, a woman's voice called out, "Travis, there you are." A blonde woman in an expensive dress hurried toward them, her face a perfect porcelain mask of beauty. She faltered slightly upon seeing Eleanor, her eyes widening before she recovered her composure. "Eliza," Travis acknowledged. Miss Dawson, this is Miss Eliza Chamberlain, daughter of the bank president. Miss Chamberlain, Miss Eleanor Dawson, newly arrived from Boston. How do you do? Eliza said with practiced politeness, though her eyes kept darting to Eleanor's scars. Travis, father is looking for you. Something about that loan for new breeding stock. I'll head over now. Travis turned back to Eleanor. Remember what I said, Miss Dawson, and don't forget about the social on Saturday. As he walked away with Eliza Chamberlain, who immediately slipped her hand possessively into the crook of his arm, Eleanor wondered if she had just glimpsed the reason for his kindness. Perhaps he simply felt sorry for her, especially in comparison to someone as flawlessly beautiful as Eliza Chamberlain. The school library position proved to be exactly as Eleanor had feared: tedious, isolating, and barely enough to survive on. Mrs. Patterson kept her sequestered in the back room, ostensibly organizing books, but really just out of sight of children and parents. By the end of her first week, Eleanor was beginning to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake in staying. Saturday arrived with clear skies and the promise of a brief respite from her loneliness. The church social would be her first opportunity to meet more townspeople, perhaps even make friends. She dressed carefully in her best dress, a blue cotton with white lace trim that had survived the journey west without too much wrinkling. The social was already in full swing when Eleanor arrived. Tables laden with food lined one wall of the church hall, while a small group of musicians played lively tunes. Couples danced in the center of the room, and clusters of people chatted animatedly. Eleanor's entrance caused a noticeable lull in the conversation nearest the door. She lifted her chin and made her way to the refreshment table, acutely aware of the whispers following her. That's her, the one Montgomery rejected. Can you blame him? Look at her face. I heard she tried to trick him with those letters. She concentrated on filling a small plate, pretending not to hear. This was hardly her first encounter with such cruelty. She would endure it as she always had. Evening, Miss Dawson. She turned to find Travis Irwin beside her, looking surprisingly polished in a clean shirt and vest, though he still wore his well-worn cowboy boots. Mr. Irwin, she acknowledged, genuinely pleased to see a friendly face. Told you the whole town turns out for these things, he said, surveying the crowd. Even the miners clean up and come down from the hills. It seems lovely, she replied diplomatically. Travis raised an eyebrow. And people are being about as welcoming as a rattlesnake, I expect. I've faced worse. I don't doubt it. He held out his hand. Would you care to dance? Eleanor stared at his outstretched hand, then at his face, searching for any sign of mockery or pity. She found none. People will talk, she warned. People always talk. Might as well give them something worth talking about. With a small smile, Eleanor placed her hand in his. Travis led her to the dance floor just as the musicians began a waltz. His hand was warm at her waist, and he moved with surprising grace for such a powerfully built man. You dance well for a cowboy, she remarked. My mother insisted her son would know more than just breaking horses and mending fences. His eyes crinkled when he smiled. She'd be mighty disappointed to see how little of her refinement stuck. As they twirled among the other dancers, Eleanor became aware of the stares. Eliza Chamberlain watched from the sidelines, her perfect features marred by a frown. Gregory Montgomery stood near the door, his disapproving gaze following their every move. Ignore them, Travis said, drawing her attention back to him. Why are you being kind to me? Eleanor asked abruptly. Is it pity? Travis's expression grew serious. Do you want the polite answer or the honest one? The honest one, please. He guided her through a turn before responding. When I was 19, I got caught in a cattle stampede. Horse went down, dragged me half a mile before I got free. His voice was matter of fact. Spent 3 months thinking I'd never walk right again, left me with enough scars on my leg to make a map of the territory. He nodded toward Montgomery. Men like that, they've never been tested, never had to rebuild themselves from broken pieces, makes them afraid of those who have. The music ended and they stopped dancing, but Travis didn't release her hand. Your scars don't make you less, Miss Dawson. They make you stronger. Anyone worth knowing understands that. Eleanor stared up at him, momentarily speechless. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, with understanding rather than pity, with admiration rather than revulsion. "Thank you," she finally managed. Travis smiled. "Now, I believe I promised my sister a dance, and she's giving me the evil eye from across the room. Would you like to meet her?" Emma Irwin proved to be a forthright woman in her late 20s with the same striking blue eyes as her brother, but with a ready laugh that transformed her entire face. "So you're the Boston lady who turned down my brother's job offer," she said, shaking Eleanor's hand firmly. "Can't say I blame you. Living with this one can be a trial." "Don't believe a word she says," Travis countered good-naturedly. "Emma thinks running my life is her God-given right." "Someone has to, little brother." Emma turned back to Eleanor. "Offer's still open if Patterson's working you too hard. I really could use the help, and the ranch is peaceful. No town gossips to deal with." Before Eleanor could respond, Eliza Chamberlain materialized at Travis's side, sliding her arm through his. "Travis, you promised me the next dance," she said with a pout, pointedly ignoring Eleanor and Emma. Travis extricated his arm gently. "Actually, I promised to introduce Miss Dawson around, Eliza, perhaps later." Eliza's perfect features hardened slightly. "I see. Well, don't forget you're escorting me to dinner at Father's tomorrow." After she flounced away, Emma rolled her eyes. "Subtle as a stampede, that one." "Emma," Travis warned. "What? Everyone knows she's been trying to lasso you for years." Emma turned to Eleanor. "My brother's the most eligible bachelor in 3 counties, according to Eliza and her father. Never mind that Travis would rather eat nails than live in town and play banker's puppet." "Emma, enough," Travis said firmly, though his eyes held amusement. "Miss Dawson doesn't need to hear about my romantic entanglements." "What romantic entanglements? You'd have to actually court someone for that," Emma retorted. She glanced around the room. "Speaking of which, I see Sheriff Miller looking mighty lonely. Excuse me." As Emma departed, Travis shook his head. "My apologies. Emma has opinions about everything and everyone." "She seems wonderful," Eleanor said sincerely. "You're fortunate to have family nearby." Travis's expression softened. "I am. After our parents passed, it's just been the 2 of us." He paused. "Do you have family back in Boston?" "No," Eleanor replied. "They were lost in the fire that." She gestured vaguely toward her face, understanding dawned in his eyes. "I'm sorry." "It was 3 years ago." She found herself wanting to explain, to have someone know the truth. "We lived above my father's bookshop. The fire started in the printing shop next door. My father got me out first, then went back for my mother and brother. None of them made it." Travis was silent for a moment. "That's a heavy burden to carry alone." "Hence becoming a mail-order bride," Eleanor said with a sad smile. "Not much demand for scarred spinsters in Boston society." "Their loss," Travis said simply. His direct gaze made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "Now, I believe I promised to introduce you around. Let's find some decent folk in this town." The rest of the evening passed in a blur as Travis introduced her to people who, away from the influence of Montgomery and his circle, were surprisingly welcoming. The sheriff and his wife, the blacksmith and his family, several ranchers and their wives all treated her with simple courtesy, if not warmth. By the time the social wound down, Eleanor felt more hopeful than she had since arriving in Park City. She might never be fully accepted, but perhaps she could carve out a place for herself here after all. Travis insisted on walking her back to the boarding house. The night air was cool, stars brilliant in the clear mountain sky. "Thank you for tonight," Eleanor said. "I believe you saved me from a very lonely evening." "My pleasure," he replied. "Though I should warn you, being seen with me probably didn't help your standing with Montgomery and his crowd." Eleanor laughed softly. "I don't think my standing with them could possibly be lower." They reached the boarding house steps and Eleanor turned to face him. "Why does Montgomery dislike you so much, if you don't mind my asking?" Travis leaned against the railing. "Simple, really. His silver mines need water. My ranch controls the watershed that feeds the entire valley. He's been trying to buy me out for years, and I keep refusing. So it's business. And the fact that his father and mine were rivals, old grudges run deep in these parts." He straightened up. "Well, Miss Dawson, I should let you get some rest." Eleanor, she said suddenly. Please call me Eleanor, he smiled, and something warm unfurled in her chest. Eleanor, then, and I'm Travis to my friends. Are we friends, Travis? I'd like to think we're heading that way. He tipped his hat. Good night, Eleanor. If you change your mind about that job, you know where to find me. She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the moonlit street, and realized with a start that for the first time since the fire, she felt something like hope. The following weeks settled into a routine. Eleanor worked diligently at the school, despite Mrs. Patterson's cool treatment and the isolation of her position. She took her meals at the boarding house, enduring the curious glances of other residents. On Sundays, she attended church, sitting in the back pew and slipping out before anyone could corner her. Travis stopped by the school occasionally, ostensibly to deliver books donated by his late mother, but really, Eleanor suspected, to check on her. Each brief visit brightened her day, though she tried not to read too much into his attention. One Wednesday afternoon, as Eleanor was shelving books, she heard raised voices from the main schoolroom. "It's simply not appropriate," came Mrs. Patterson's strident tone. "The children are impressionable. And what exactly would they be learning?" That was Travis's voice, unusually sharp. "That appearances don't determine a person's worth seems like a valuable lesson to me." Eleanor moved closer to the door to listen. "Mr. Irwin, I understand your interest in Miss Dawson's welfare, but I assure you she is being treated fairly." "Fairly? You've got her hidden away like something shameful. She was a teacher's assistant in Boston. She should be teaching, not counting books in a back room." Heat rose in Eleanor's cheeks. She hadn't told Travis about her previous occupation. He must have asked around about her. "That decision is mine to make, Mr. Irwin. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a class to teach." The door opened suddenly, and Eleanor stumbled back, nearly colliding with a bookshelf. Travis stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous before softening at the sight of her. "You heard that," he said. "It wasn't a question. You shouldn't have confronted her," Eleanor replied, embarrassed. "I don't need you fighting my battles. Someone should." He stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "You're wasting away in here, Eleanor, taking scraps when you deserve a full plate. It's employment, it's respectable, it's not enough." Travis ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Come work at the ranch." "Emma wasn't just being polite. We need the help, and you need to be somewhere your talents are valued." Eleanor busied herself straightening a stack of books. "People would talk, they already do, about your attention to me. Let them. It's different for a woman alone," she said quietly. "My reputation is all I have." Travis was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had gentled. "At least come out to the ranch on Sunday. Emma's invited some neighbors for dinner. Get away from town for a day." Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Sunday." His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I'll pick you up after church." Sunday arrived with perfect early summer weather. Travis was waiting outside the church with his wagon, earning curious glances from the congregation. Eleanor, wearing her second-best dress, a green calico she'd altered to better cover her scars, felt a flutter of nervousness as she approached. "Ready for a proper country dinner?" Travis asked, helping her up onto the seat. The drive to the Silver Spur Ranch took them through rolling hills and meadows bright with wildflowers. As they crested a rise, Eleanor gasped at the view spread before them. A verdant valley with a river winding through it, surrounded by mountains still capped with snow. Nestled in the center was a sprawling ranch house with a barn and outbuildings, cattle dotting the pastures beyond. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "My father built it with his own hands," Travis said proudly. "Started with nothing but determination and a few head of cattle. Now we run one of the biggest herds in the territory." The ranch house was larger than it had appeared from a distance, built of solid timber with a wide porch wrapping around it. Emma met them at the door, wiping her hands on an apron. "You're just in time," she greeted Eleanor warmly. "The Millers and the Thompsons are already here, and dinner's nearly ready." The interior was surprisingly refined, with polished wood floors, comfortable furniture, and bookshelves lining one wall of the main room. Eleanor ran her fingers along the spines, noting classics mixed with practical manuals on ranching and animal husbandry. Our mother's collection, Travis explained, watching her. She was determined we'd be educated even out here in the wilderness. She succeeded, Eleanor observed. You're more well-read than many Boston gentlemen I've known, Travis chuckled. Don't let that get around, might ruin my reputation as a simple cowboy. Dinner was a lively affair, with Sheriff Miller and his wife, the Thompson family from a neighboring ranch, and several of Travis's ranch hands joining them around a massive oak table. The food was abundant and delicious: roast beef, fresh vegetables from Emma's garden, and apple pie for dessert. What struck Eleanor most was how naturally she was included in the conversation. No one stared at her scars or whispered behind their hands. Mrs. Miller asked about Boston, the Thompsons' teenage son asked about her teaching experience, and Emma kept her plate full and her glass never empty. After the meal, while the others settled in the main room for coffee, Travis invited Eleanor to see the rest of the ranch. They walked through the barn, where he showed her the prize stallion he was training, then out to a hilltop overlooking the property. Your father built something remarkable here, Eleanor said as they watched the sun begin its descent toward the mountains. He did. Travis's voice held pride and something deeper. Taught me everything I know about ranching, about responsibility, about being a man of your word. He sounds wonderful. He would have liked you. Travis turned to face her. Said you can tell a person's character by how they handle adversity. By that measure, you'd have impressed him mightily. Eleanor looked away, uncomfortable with the admiration in his eyes. You give me too much credit. I've simply done what was necessary to survive. That's just it. You didn't just survive. You kept your dignity, your kindness. Do you know how rare that is? Before she could respond, Travis continued, I've been thinking about what you said about reputation and appearances. He cleared his throat. What if you came to work here as Emma's companion officially? You'd have your own room in the house, proper chaperoning, and no one could question your propriety. Eleanor stared at him. You've thought this through? I have. His blue eyes held her steadily. I can't stand seeing you wither away in that school, Eleanor. You deserve better. Why does it matter so much to you? Travis was silent for a long moment. Because from the moment I saw you on that boardwalk, I knew you were someone special. Someone who didn't deserve the hand life had dealt her. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. I'll consider it, she said finally. As they walked back toward the house, Travis suddenly stopped. I almost forgot I have something for you. From his pocket, he withdrew a small wooden carving of a bird in flight. Made it myself, not much of an artist, but he placed it in her palm. Reminded me of you. Eleanor ran her fingers over the smooth wood. It's beautiful, but why does it remind you of me? Because despite everything trying to keep it grounded, it still finds a way to soar. Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition that went beyond friendship. Eleanor closed her fingers around the carving, holding it close to her heart. The ride back to town was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the boarding house, Travis spoke again. Think about my offer, no rush, but know it's there. I will, Eleanor promised, and for the first time she found herself seriously considering it. The following morning, Eleanor arrived at the school to find Mrs. Patterson waiting with an unusually grave expression. Miss Dawson, I've received some concerns from parents about your continued employment here. Eleanor's heart sank. What concerns could they possibly have? I hardly interact with the children. It seems your association with Mr. Irwin has raised questions about your character. Mrs. Patterson's thin lips pressed together disapprovingly. This is a respectable school, Miss Dawson. My association. He's a friend. Nothing improper has occurred. Nevertheless, the school board feels it would be best if we terminated your position. The injustice of it burned like fire. Because I spent time with a respected rancher and his sister, or is it because Gregory Montgomery suggested it? Mrs. Patterson's flush confirmed Eleanor's suspicion. Mr. Montgomery is a major benefactor of this school. His opinions carry weight. I see. Eleanor drew herself up to her full height. Then I'll save you the trouble of dismissing me. I resign, effective immediately. She gathered her few personal belongings, dignity the only armor she had left. As she walked down the main street toward the boarding house, she felt oddly unburdened. The decision had been made for her, but perhaps it was for the best, Mrs. Holloway met her at the door with a sympathetic expression. Heard what happened at the school, shameful the way this town treats newcomers. Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. I'll need to make new arrangements. Perhaps you know of other employment opportunities in town, the older woman sighed. Wish I did, dear, but Montgomery's got influence everywhere that matters. She hesitated. There's also the matter of your room. I've had pressure to open it for another boarder. I understand. Eleanor refused to let her despair show. How long do I have, end of the week? I'm sorry, truly I am. Eleanor nodded and climbed the stairs to her small room. Once inside, she allowed herself a moment of quiet tears. Then, squaring her shoulders, she took out the wooden bird Travis had given her and the paper with directions to his ranch. She had a letter to write. Travis arrived the next morning before Eleanor had even finished breakfast. He burst into the boarding house dining room, hat in hand, eyes searching until they found her. You're coming to the ranch, he said without preamble, causing every head in the room to turn. Eleanor set down her coffee cup. Good morning to you too, Mr. Irwin, she said pointedly. He had the grace to look sheepish. Sorry, good morning, Miss Dawson. He glanced around at the interested audience. May I speak with you privately? In the small parlor off the main hall, Travis paced like a caged mountain lion. Emma got your letter, we both did. It's settled you're coming to work at the Silver Spur. Travis, I appreciate, no. He stopped pacing to face her. This isn't charity or pity, we need help, real help. Emma's running herself ragged with the house and the books and correspondence. I need someone who can write better than a schoolboy to handle contracts and letters to buyers. And the fact that I've just been fired and evicted has nothing to do with your urgency. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. It has everything to do with it, he admitted. But the job offer was genuine before, and it's genuine now, Eleanor sighed. People will talk more than ever. Let them. Travis's gaze was unwavering. Eleanor, you came west for a new start. This is just not the one you expected. She thought of the alternatives, returning east in defeat, or trying to find work in another town where her scars would still mark her as different. At least at the Silver Spur, she had already been accepted for who she was. When do we leave? She asked finally. Relief washed over his features. Today, now, Emma's getting your room ready as we speak. By noon, Eleanor's trunk and belongings were loaded in Travis's wagon. As they prepared to depart, Gregory Montgomery approached, his expression thunderous. So the rumors are true, he said coldly. I must say, Miss Dawson, I thought better of your moral character. Travis stiffened beside her. Watch your tone, Montgomery, or what, Irwin? You'll further sully this woman's reputation. Too late for that. Montgomery's smile was cruel. Though perhaps that was your plan all along, to take advantage of her desperate situation. Eleanor stepped forward before Travis could respond. Mr. Montgomery, you rejected me based solely on my appearance after encouraging me to travel thousands of miles. You then used your influence to ensure I couldn't support myself in this town. Whatever moral high ground you think you possess, you lost it long ago. Montgomery's face reddened. You'll regret this decision, Miss Dawson, and you, Irwin, this won't help your water rights case. Threatening me in front of the sheriff's wife. Travis nodded toward Mrs. Miller, who was watching from the boarding house porch. Not your smartest move. Montgomery stalked away, and Travis helped Eleanor onto the wagon seat. Ready. As they drove out of town, Eleanor felt a weight lifting from her shoulders with each mile. Whatever challenges lay ahead at the Silver Spur, at least she would face them on her own terms. Life at the ranch quickly settled into a comfortable routine. Eleanor's room in the main house was larger than her boarding house accommodation, with a window overlooking the mountains and bookshelves Travis had installed himself. Emma proved to be not just a boss but a friend, teaching Eleanor the running of the ranch with patience and good humor. True to Travis's word, there was plenty of work, accounts to organize, correspondence to handle, supply orders to manage. Eleanor discovered she had a talent for negotiation, securing better prices for the ranch's beef than Travis had previously managed. You're worth twice what we're paying you, Emma declared after Eleanor finalized a particularly advantageous contract with buyers from Denver. Travis was right about you. Speaking of Travis, Eleanor said carefully, he seems to be away a lot lately. In the 3 weeks since she'd come to the ranch, she'd seen him only in passing as he left early and returned late, often taking meals in the bunkhouse with his men. Emma gave her a shrewd look. He's pushing the cattle to summer pasture up in the high country. But you're right, he's also giving you space to settle in without anyone questioning your arrangement. Oh, Eleanor felt strangely disappointed. That's considerate of him. My brother may look like a rough cowboy, but he's got more honor than most men who claim to be gentlemen, Emma said proudly. Now, help me with these preserves. Winter comes early in these mountains, and we need to be ready. The days lengthened into summer, and Eleanor found herself thriving. Her skin bronzed from time outdoors, and work with Emma in the garden and kitchen added muscle to her formerly slender frame. Sometimes she caught glimpses of Travis watching her from a distance, but he maintained a careful formality in their interactions. One evening in late July, as Eleanor sat on the porch enjoying the sunset, Travis joined her, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He offered one to her silently, then settled into the chair beside her. Thank you, she said, accepting the cup. It's beautiful tonight. It is. But he was looking at her, not the sunset. You look different, stronger. I feel stronger. Eleanor sipped her coffee. Ranch life agrees with me, it seems. Emma says you've revolutionized our bookkeeping, says we're more profitable than we've been in years. Eleanor laughed. Hardly revolutionary, I just applied some basic accounting principles. They fell into comfortable silence, watching as the sky shifted from gold to pink to deepening purple. Finally, Travis spoke again. There's a town council meeting tomorrow, water rights on the agenda again. Montgomery still trying to gain control of your watershed, always. Travis's expression hardened. He's bringing in lawyers from Salt Lake City this time, claiming eminent domain for the mines. Can he do that? He can try. Travis set his cup down with a clink. I'd like you to come with me. You have a way with words I don't, and frankly, we could use a woman's perspective in that room full of men. Eleanor hesitated. Going back to town with you will only add fuel to the gossip. To hell with gossip. Travis's eyes were intense in the fading light. This is about our livelihood, the ranch, our future, our future. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. All right, Eleanor agreed. I'll come. The town hall was packed the following afternoon, with miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, and other citizens crowded onto wooden benches. At the front of the room, the town council, including Gregory Montgomery, sat at a long table. Eleanor and Travis found seats near the back, acutely aware of the stares and whispers their entrance provoked. The meeting proceeded through routine business before reaching the water rights issue. Montgomery stood, presenting his case for diverting more water from the river to serve the mines. The silver industry employs hundreds of men in this region, he argued smoothly. The economic benefit to Park City far outweighs the needs of a few ranchers who, frankly, could relocate their operations elsewhere. A murmur ran through the crowd. Travis leaned forward, his jaw tight. The Irwin family has held legal water rights for over 20 years, Montgomery continued. But times change, and the needs of the many must take precedence over the few. I propose the town council invoke eminent domain to secure appropriate water allocation for mining operations. One of the Salt Lake lawyers stood, citing precedents from other mining regions. The council members nodded thoughtfully, clearly swayed by the legal arguments. When the floor opened for comments, Travis strode to the front of the room. Eleanor held her breath, knowing his temper could get the better of him. Gentlemen, he began, his voice steady despite the muscle working in his jaw. My father came to this valley when there was nothing but wilderness. He built a ranch that now provides beef to communities throughout the territory, employs 15 men year-round, and pays more taxes than any other agricultural operation in the county. He looked directly at Montgomery. The water you want to divert doesn't just serve my ranch. It serves every farm and ranch in the Southern Valley. Divert it upstream and you'll destroy not just the Irwin property, but the livelihoods of dozens of families. The council chairman, a thin man with spectacles, cleared his throat. Mr. Irwin, while your family history is touching, the legal argument for economic necessity is compelling. May I speak? Eleanor found herself standing before she'd consciously decided to. All eyes turned to her as she moved to join Travis at the front. Miss Dawson, the chairman acknowledged with surprise, you're not a property owner in this community. No, but I am the accountant for the Silver Spur Ranch, and I've reviewed the economic impact of both the ranching and mining industries on this region. A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Women rarely spoke at such meetings, let alone on matters of business. Mining is indeed profitable, Eleanor continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke, but it's also finite. The silver will eventually be depleted, and when it is, the mines will close, the miners will leave, and Park City will become a ghost town unless there's a sustainable industry to support it. She turned to face the audience. Ranching and farming are sustainable. With proper management of water resources, they can support this community for generations. Destroy that balance for short-term gain, and you destroy Park City's future. Montgomery stood. This is absurd. We're listening to a scarred spinster who arrived on the morning train not 3 months ago. A woman who couldn't even secure a proper marriage or maintain a position at the school. That's enough, Montgomery, Travis growled, stepping forward. Eleanor placed a restraining hand on his arm. Mr. Montgomery is right about one thing, she said calmly. I am scarred. I survived a fire that took everything from me, my family, my home, my place in society. And yes, Mr. Montgomery rejected me because of these scars. She faced Montgomery directly, but what he fails to understand is that surviving hardship teaches you to recognize what truly matters. Short-term profit or long-term sustainability, personal gain or community welfare, these are questions that transcend appearance or status. The room had gone completely still, every eye fixed on Eleanor. I may be new to Park City, but I've seen how communities die when natural resources are exploited without thought for the future. Is that what you want for your town? For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sheriff Miller stood. The lady makes a good point. My family plans to be here long after the silver plays out. I'd like there to be something left for my children. Others began to voice agreement. The town baker, the blacksmith, several farmers from the valley. The council members exchanged glances, clearly reconsidering their position. I move we table this discussion and commission an independent study of water usage and long-term economic impact, one council member suggested. Seconded, said another quickly. The motion passed, and the meeting adjourned with Montgomery storming out, his lawyers trailing behind. As the crowd dispersed, many stopped to speak to Eleanor, some to congratulate her, others simply to introduce themselves properly for the first time. When they finally made it outside, Travis turned to Eleanor, his eyes bright with something she couldn't quite name. That was. He shook his head, seemingly at a loss for words. You were magnificent. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. I just spoke the truth. The truth can be hard to hear. You made them listen. He took her hand, surprising her. Thank you. The ride back to the ranch was filled with a different kind of tension than before, anticipation rather than anxiety. As they approached the house, Travis suddenly turned the wagon down a side trail. Where are we going? Eleanor asked. There's something I want to show you. The trail led to a small plateau overlooking the entire valley, the river winding like a silver ribbon through green pastures. The setting sun bathed everything in golden light, turning the landscape into something from a painting. Travis helped her down from the wagon, but didn't release her hand. My father brought me here when I was 10 years old, said someday all this would be mine to protect, not just to own. It's breathtaking, Eleanor said softly. After today, I knew I had to bring you here. He turned to face her fully. Eleanor, I've been keeping my distance because I didn't want to compromise your position or make you uncomfortable, but I can't pretend anymore. Her heart began to race. Pretend what? That I'm not falling in love with you? The words came out in a rush. That I haven't been since that first day in town, that watching you fight for this land today didn't just confirm everything I've felt. Eleanor stared at him, scarcely able to believe what she was hearing. Travis, I know it's too soon, he continued quickly. I know you came here for a job, not this. If you don't feel the same way, I understand. Nothing has to change. Eleanor reached up, gently touching the side of his face. I came west looking for a fresh start, for someone who could see beyond my scars. I never imagined I'd find someone who would see them as strength. Travis covered her hand with his own. That first day when Montgomery rejected you, all I could think was what a fool he was. Not because he couldn't see past your scars, but because he couldn't see the courage it took to live with them. I'm not brave, she whispered. I was desperate. Desperation would have sent you back east. Courage brought you to the ranch. Courage made you stand up in that meeting today. He stepped closer. Eleanor Dawson, you're the strongest person I've ever known, and I love you for it. I love you too, she admitted, the words feeling like freedom. I've been afraid to hope. Travis's hand cupped her scarred cheek, his thumb gently tracing the ridged skin. Never be afraid to hope with me. Then he kissed her, softly at first, then with growing passion as she responded. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the sun had slipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and purple. We should get back, Eleanor said reluctantly. Emma will worry, Travis smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Emma's probably been watching with a spyglass. She's been pushing me to declare myself for weeks. Eleanor laughed. Is that why she kept finding errands for us to do together? Subtlety isn't her strong suit. He helped her back into the wagon, but paused before climbing up himself. Eleanor, I don't want to rush you, but I need you to know this isn't temporary for me. When the time is right, I want to make this permanent. The sincerity in his eyes made her throat tight with emotion. I'd like that very much. News of their courtship spread quickly through the county. Some whispered that Travis Irwin was settling for damaged goods. Others said Eleanor Dawson had engineered the whole situation to secure her position. But as summer turned to fall and fall to winter, the gossip faded in the face of their obvious devotion. Eleanor flourished at the ranch, taking on more responsibilities as she gained confidence. She started a small school for the children of the ranch hands, teaching reading and arithmetic in the evenings. Travis expanded the herd, securing new contracts based on Eleanor's negotiations. Together, they made the Silver Spur more prosperous than it had ever been. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling gently outside and the ranch house filled with the scent of pine and cinnamon, Travis knelt beside Eleanor's chair and presented her with a small velvet box. I know we agreed to wait, he said, eyes shining in the firelight, but I can't imagine spending another day without knowing you'll be my wife. Inside the box was a delicate gold ring set with a sapphire. It was my mother's, Travis explained. Emma insisted you should have it. From across the room, Emma wiped away tears, nodding encouragement. Eleanor Dawson, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here, help me protect this land, raise a family with me? Eleanor looked from Travis to Emma to the ring gleaming in the firelight. She thought of the scared, scarred woman who had stepped off the train less than a year ago, hoping for nothing more than basic acceptance. Instead, she had found love, purpose, and a true home. Yes, she said, her voice clear and sure. Yes to all of it. They were married on New Year's Day, 1876, in the ranch house parlor. Sheriff Miller performed the ceremony with Emma as maid of honor and the ranch hands and neighboring families as witnesses. Eleanor wore a cream-colored dress Emma had helped her make, and for the first time since the fire she wore her hair swept up, her scars visible to all. You look beautiful, Travis whispered as she joined him before the makeshift altar. I feel beautiful, she replied, and realized it was true. As they exchanged vows, Eleanor thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, the mail-order bride advertisement that had led her to Park City, Montgomery's rejection that had seemed like the end of her hopes. And finally, the cowboy who had seen her scars not as disfigurement, but as proof of her strength. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. When the last guest had departed and Emma had retired to her room, Travis led Eleanor to the master bedroom, now their bedroom. "Welcome home, Mrs. Irwin," he said, closing the door behind them. "I've been home since the day I arrived," Eleanor replied, stepping into his embrace. "I just didn't know it yet." Spring brought new life to the Silver Spur. Calves were born, fields turned green, and wild flowers carpeted the hillsides. Eleanor discovered she was expecting their first child, news that had Travis alternating between ecstatic planning and anxious hovering. "You need to rest more," he insisted one afternoon, finding her in the garden with Emma. "I'm pregnant, not ill," Eleanor countered, laughing at his concern. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, most of them while working far harder than I am." "She's right," Emma agreed. "Mother was mending fences the day before Travis was born." "That explains a lot," Eleanor teased, earning a mock scowl from her husband. As her pregnancy progressed, Eleanor was touched by how protective Travis became, not just of her physical well-being, but of her feelings. When they ventured into town, he proudly escorted her on his arm, his eyes challenging anyone who dared stare at her scars or her growing belly. Word came that Gregory Montgomery had sold his mining interests and moved to San Francisco, his dreams of water diversion defeated by the town council's eventual ruling in favor of the ranchers. The silver mines continued operating under new ownership, but with stricter regulations regarding water usage. "He never could stand losing," Travis remarked when they heard the news, "especially to people he considered beneath him." "His loss was my gain," Eleanor said simply. "If he hadn't rejected me, I might never have found you." In October, after a mercifully quick labor, their son was born, Thomas William Irwin, named for both grandfathers he would never meet. He had Travis's blue eyes and a shock of dark hair and a lusty cry that announced his arrival to the entire ranch. "He's perfect," Travis whispered, holding his son for the first time. "Absolutely perfect." As Eleanor watched her husband cradle their child, tears of joy slipped down her cheeks. From the ashes of her old life, something beautiful had grown, a family, a purpose, a love stronger than any she could have imagined. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons, each bringing new joys and challenges. Thomas was joined by a sister, Sarah Emma, 2 years later, and another brother, James, 3 years after that. The children grew strong and confident, raised amid the beauty and demands of ranch life. Eleanor's school for the ranch children expanded, eventually accepting students from neighboring properties as well. With Travis's encouragement, she wrote to the Territorial Education Board, securing official recognition and funding for what became the Silver Spur School. Travis and Eleanor's partnership extended beyond family and home. Together they weathered drought years and market downturns, expanding the ranch's operations to include breeding horses and even a small apple orchard that became famous throughout the county. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Travis surprised Eleanor with a trip to Boston, her first return since leaving as a mail-order bride. They visited her parents' graves, and Eleanor found herself able to remember the good times without being overwhelmed by grief. They explored the city together, Travis marveling at the buildings and bustle, Eleanor seeing her birthplace through new eyes. "Do you ever regret it?" Travis asked as they stood on the deck of the ship that would carry them back west. "Leaving all this for the wilderness." Eleanor looked up at him, at the face that had grown even more dear to her over the years. "Not for a single moment. I found my true home with you." When they returned to the Silver Spur, the children ran to meet them, their faces alight with joy. Thomas, now 9, already showing his father's talent with horses. Sarah, a serious 7-year-old with her mother's love of books. And little James, 4 years old and fearless, the spitting image of his Uncle William in the faded photograph Eleanor kept on her dresser. Behind them came Emma, now married to Sheriff Miller and splitting her time between town and the ranch she still considered home. That night, after the children were asleep, Eleanor and Travis sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. His arm was warm around her shoulders, his presence as essential to her as breath. "Remember the first time we danced?" he asked, his voice soft with memory. At that church social, everyone was staring, Eleanor recalled. I was terrified. And now look at us. Respectable pillars of the community, Travis chuckled. Who would have thought? Eleanor leaned her head against his shoulder. You did. You saw the possibility of this life before I could even imagine it. No, Travis said, turning to look at her. I just saw you, the real you, beyond the scars. Everything else we built together. In the stillness of the evening, with the ranch peaceful around them and their children sleeping safely under their roof, Eleanor felt the truth of his words to her very core. Her scars had not defined her life. They had merely marked the beginning of a journey that had led her here, to this man, this family, this home. I love you, Travis Irwin, she said simply. He kissed her, the same tenderness in his touch as the first time on that overlook so many years ago. And I love you, Eleanor Irwin, scars and all. As they sat together under the vast canopy of stars, Eleanor thought about the young woman who had stepped off the train in Park City all those years ago, scarred, rejected, but ultimately undefeated. How far she had come since then, how much she had gained by having the courage to stay. In the end, the mail-order bride rejected for her scars had found something far greater than mere acceptance. She had found a man who saw her wounds as badges of honor, a family that cherished her strength, and a life more fulfilling than anything she could have dreamed. And in that knowledge, Eleanor Dawson Irwin found her greatest healing.